This little guy. It's small, it's light, it's really bokalicious. This is the Pergear F1.8 Manual Lens for Fujifilm cameras. Retailing at about $70, could this be a lens that everyone should have in their kit? We're gonna discuss that question and see what kind of video results we can get out of this. I've been using the lens for about a month now, and it's quickly become one of my favorites for B-roll when I'm trying to pack light and not carry a lot of big heavy lenses with me. In contrast, I always say in contrast, as far as other lenses that I've been using primarily, and the lens I reviewed last time, this is the 18-135 by Fuji. And this right now is my favorite lens because of its versatility. Obviously, it's range from 18 pretty wide to 135, pretty telephoto. And with decent lighting, you get really good results. It's all right in low light. And playing around with it, you can even get some good depth of field. But the thing with this is, it's heavy, and if you want that nice depth of field and subject separation when you're close to your subject, it's really difficult to get on this because of the difference in aperture between f1.8 and this. So this 25mm is special in its own way and deserves some coverage. Let's get the specs out of the way. It's only 195 grams, so it's pretty light. And it has an aperture range from f1.8 to f16. The large aperture makes it pretty good for low light, but more importantly, and what I primarily got this for, is its bokeh. At 25mm on an APS-C sensor, it's equivalent to about 37.5mm in 35mm format. This gives you an effective field of view of about 57.4 degrees. It's considered more of a medium wide lens versus ultra wide. The other impressive thing about this is its minimum focal length of about 20 centimeters, which makes it great for macro photography and when you really want to get close to your subject and keep it in focus. We're gonna watch a quick sequence I put together shooting it on this lens while I was at the park the other day. It was really nice and sunny and we captured some really cool shots. We'll come back after that and kind of discuss the pros and some of the things that I think this lens can improve upon. So let's check it out. Focus, focus. Come on, focus. There we go. There we go. A little more. A little more. Don't be scared. Come on. Come on. Good boy. Good boy. Cool, so what'd you think? Most of these B-roll shots were done at 1080p, 120 FPS. In fact, without having an ND filter up here, I cranked up the shutter speed for a lot of the shots up to like 4,000 just because it was extremely sunny outside and I didn't want the shots to be overexposed. So I wasn't really shooting as properly in that I wasn't keeping the shutter rule of double my frame rate. But for a lot of people, I know a manual lens is going to be a little intimidating, especially if you haven't used one or don't have a lot of experience using them. I know that was definitely the case with me before I got my first manual lens back when I was shooting on the Sony a6300. But let's talk a little bit more about the actual quality of the lens and the footage that you get out of it. Overall, the lens is really good. There are some weird quirks with it that we'll discuss, but let's start with the good. First off, when you've nailed focus, the subject separation you can get is incredible, and at $70, this is super cinematic. So this is why I really recommend picking one of these up. It's just for that kind of quality and depth of field and subject separation that you can get for even less interesting shots like writing, words on a page, typing. you can really pick out some really cool details that you normally wouldn't notice unless you had that pinpoint precision focus where you're literally going from word to word. This is really good for using outdoors for landscape shots, up close with flowers and people. You get really flattering shots. Especially with video, one of the main things I look for in a manual lens, and you should too, is a smooth focus ring. If this is jerky or unreliable, or you can't really manipulate it well, you're not gonna get those smooth pulls. And this tool, despite how sharp, it's not gonna perform well, and your shots are not gonna be as creamy and smooth as you want them to be, kind of defeating the whole point of having this manual lens. With a little practice, I found it was easy to get those kind of shots with this lens. With moving subjects, and again, this applies to manual lenses in general, it's a lot more difficult the closer the subject is in order to keep them at focus, especially when you're at f1.8. If you are ready to take the plunge and get into more manual shooting, you can save a lot of money and get a very sharp, high aperture lens for a fraction of the cost of its autofocus counterpart. So while filming myself isn't the ideal shooting situation for this kind of lens, the B-roll shots and the B-roll examples I'm putting throughout this video are perfect for it, because when I do them, I like to be in manual settings. So I'm able to get a far sharper lens that's much better at getting bokeh, depth of field, and it's a better low light performer, and I don't have to spend like $500–600 for something that's similar in specs but adds autofocus. If I'm gonna be shooting in manual for the most part anyways for that kind of use case, then I can save a lot of money and just go with the manual lens. While there's a bit of a learning curve because you really do have to be one with your lens, it teaches you a lot and I think makes you a better photographer or videographer because you're really honed in on the specific settings that you're shooting at. You understand, okay, this is the kind of shot I'm getting. How do I film it? I'm not relying on the camera's autofocus, because the camera doesn't necessarily know what should be in focus, or it doesn't know how long I want to hold a shot in focus, or how slowly or quickly I want to change focus, or if I want to focus pull. Granted, some cameras, especially more advanced ones like Sony's, are better at it doing it in camera. While I know a manual lens might be tricky and not be the ideal lens for a lot of people, I think this is kind of the next level after getting out of auto mode and getting into manual mode on your camera. The ability to then go into manual mode on your lens opens up a whole new world of shooting possibilities. But don't get me wrong, if someone would come to me right now and say, hey, that lens you have there, I'll make it autofocus and it'll be beautiful, it'll work perfectly, would you like to do that? No strings attached? Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have a lens that has autofocus there when I need it. Because there are gonna be times when you do want autofocus for whatever reason. For example, right now, this is the 35mm f2. It's on autofocus. I typically keep it on autofocus single or manual. The lens in total right now is about 4 feet away from me. If I want to adjust settings, I have to know where my face is and I have to manually adjust it on there and play with it and then come back into frame and make sure that I'm still in focus. It's not the easiest thing, and I do have a field monitor down there, so I occasionally look down there to make sure everything looks good. When it comes to actually filming yourself, like we were saying, it's too tight. If you're vlogging, like you see in some of these examples here, even holding your camera arm's length away, it's really tight, and you'll notice that it's pretty cropped in on your face. You either lose like the top or the bottom. And of course, without that autofocus, you're gonna struggle to really dial in the settings. You're gonna have to flip it around, play back the clip. It's not a vlogging lens. It's not as convenient as having it on autofocus. Granted, I know, especially with Fuji cameras and this lens, there is focus hunting on occasion. So that is something I'm mindful of, but it just makes it a lot easier, especially when you're filming yourself. This is an example of where having autofocus would be far easier. See, just like right there. That was a good example of it thought that I wanted it to focus on there, but in reality, I wasn't trying to do that. So tied in with all that, autofocus isn't always reliable. If you're trying to take more professional footage, chances are you're gonna be throwing it into manual focus anyway. So again, you can save a lot of money and just get a manual lens that doesn't have autofocus. What about low light performance at f1.8? It's good, but it didn't wow me. It didn't really perform as well as I thought it would in low light. Similar to what other reviews have noticed, I think it's about maybe a half to a full stop darker than what I would expect it to be, and I was starting to crank up the ISO far quicker than I would have liked as soon as it was getting darker outside in one of my previous shoots. I'm not quite sure it's performing like the f1.8 I thought it would. And this is where we start to see some of the cost-cutting measures that kind of brought us to the $70 price point. They're probably not going to be deal breakers for a lot of you, but they are something that you should consider when looking at the pros and cons of any purchase. On the topic of darkness, this lens can produce a lot of vignetting, more than I personally like. In fact, I don't really like the vignetting look. If I ever want to add vignetting as an artistic effect, I would usually do that in the post-edit. So I don't really like it when it's kind of baked into the lens. It's not noticeable for a lot of shots, but depending on how you're shooting, it can become a lot more noticeable, especially in high contrast scenes. You'll definitely notice it in some of the corners like you see in some of these shots. And now for the last major con. We were talking earlier about how smooth this is as far as focusing, but it seems for infinity, like when you have a subject really far off in the distance, so you'd think you'd go all the way to infinity. Not quite. For whatever reason, it loses a little focus when you go all the way to the end. And if you want focus set to infinity, you have to go back a few millimeters. And I'm not sure what's up with that. It was definitely annoying, and something when I first noticed, I'm like, what? Like I thought I was doing something wrong, and I tried it a couple times, different subjects. I'm like, that building is like at least a mile or so off in the distance. I should just be set to infinity. Not the case. Truthfully, I don't know how to explain it. I don't understand enough about the mechanics that go into a lens and production and whatever to kind of even guess. What is it, Papa? Kitty wants to share. What tip do you want to share next? This is a really good lens for $70. You should check it out using the links below. Thanks, Bale. And now back to the program. So recap, at $70, this medium wide angle lens produces really sharp images, as far as I can tell, pretty much throughout. It's fairly decent at low light, although it could be better. Where it really stands out, again, is being able to be close to your subject and get that nice subject isolation, really creamy, really bokeh-licious, as well as the ability to have really smooth focus pulling. I'd say this lens is probably best for B-roll, interviews, and other situations where you want to capture semi-wide scenes and you're operating the camera itself, because this is a manual lens. And while it's not perfect and does have some of those issues we discussed, at a fraction of the cost of what you would be paying for an autofocus counterpart to this, you're getting a really high quality look for less than $100. I think everyone needs at least one manual lens in their kit, and being that this is so small and light to carry around, this is a cool one that's pretty versatile, and I think this could be the one. Do you see yourself using this? Let me know your thoughts down below, and until the next one.